And we're live. And it's lunch break. And it's the last lunch break of the season. And we're here with Amanda Vanhoozier and Eryn Kelly and myself, Seth Brammer. And our other producer, Caitlin, is not here today. She ditched us on the very last show of the season. But we love her and we forgive her. But I will welcome my two guests, the other folks that work on the show here with us every week. And while we wait for some folks to gather in and start this conversation, I thought this would be a really good time for us to just talk about how we got into this kind of situation where we spend time making a show on the internet about the food system. Because, of course, people might not actually know you, Amanda and Eryn, and might not know why I care about these things. So let's start there. Amanda, why, as our fearless leader here and as the current chair of Slow Food DFW, and the reason why I think Eryn and I are probably here right now doing these things is really just because we're so inspired by you. I was hoping you could just share your story a little bit about, why this moment and, why slow food as we begin to talk about lunch break and kind of reflect over this last season.
Well, yes, because, hi, everyone. I'm glad.
Oh, yeah. Also, hello.
Yes, I was on the very first lunch break, and we were doing an Instagram Live, and I had to hold my phone up for 45 minutes, and that was my realization that we probably needed to do it with the technology that Seth had instead of Instagram Live. I don't even know when we started, but it was probably about 15 weeks ago. And we felt like Slow Food, DFW, and all the slow food was just positioned right. And we were ready for what we were seeing back in March and April. It was like all that we've been, Slow Food is 30 years old. So for 30 years, we've been talking about good, clean, and fair food, and the ability to cook yourself and not cook yourself, cook for others, and also, eat local. And we realized that the whole food system on the industrial side was, breaking apart, and it was like where everybody was shifting to go to find the farmers markets. Where's the farms? Where are the stores that have beef right now? Because we don't have a lot of beef in the grocery store. So we felt like we were positioned just right to bring about just all the people that we were already connected to and say, let's introduce the players, and we call them the Snailblazers, in the local food system here in Dallas. So that is where we started talking about the idea, and right away we made a spreadsheet and was like, oh, we already have 20 episodes, without even trying. So
absolutely. Absolutely.
The best way to go.
Yeah. And it's been a lot of fun. I'd love for you to talk a little bit more just about what Slow Food does kind of outside of lunch break and kind of what a little bit more of the organization looks like. And I think we're going to talk a little bit more about that, as we go through the show today. But just to get people started, a little bit of a taste of, Slow Food isn't just about a live show on the internet. Actually, it's this really, really big thing.
Yes, and it's actually getting deeper into a food system and also wider, because if you're talking about good food, it's not just, that food is good because I went to this restaurant and found it, or I had to buy it at this certain store, but it also means that it's culturally appropriate, or that it is also like for different traditions. And so it's like going back in history and finding the sources of the food. And also, good food is also not traveled and carried around the world globally. And, because you have to have a lot of inputs into that. So that brings you to the next step, which is clean. And so with clean food, you're looking at clean for your health, and then also clean for the environment. And then also just making it a strong, sustainable food system that also includes the economy. So we saw all that breaking down in April and May. And it was like turning to local just made sense. And that's that local economy. And then if you take that on to the next step, and that's fair. So going deeper into fair, fair is the farmers get the right price for their food that they've grown or produced, but you also have that ability to say, are the workers that are preparing the food, are they getting fair wages? And we saw this with the breakdown in the restaurants. And I know you had the Shift Dallas going on, Seth, that we were really recognizing that system wasn't a really good system and fair for everyone that's in the industry. And so then the next step is when we were with Slow Food USA, we were working on an equity, inclusion, and justice manifesto. And it just really brought that to light this summer and said, everything that we share, we need to make sure that we're showing what's equitable and that there's food access for all, but also that there is the ability to provide food by starting community gardens. And so, some of our talks on the lunch break did bring that about. And then we also received funds into Dallas from Slow Food USA from the National Resilience Funds. And so that on a bigger scale, there was what organizations were making the shift here right when COVID started. And so there were 5 organizations. All of them have been featured on our lunch break. And we really appreciate Slow Food USA for passing. It was a pass-through funds from Whole Foods. And so that put money right where action was being taken at the grassroots level. So when you think about Slow Food, it's got 160 chapters across the United States, and Dallas-Fort Worth is one of those. And so we do follow a lot from USA and from our region, but we also here in DFW want to make sure that we are featuring and honoring those that are on the ground working here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
Excellent. And, and that's why really when we started this project, and as you said, started making a list of the different kinds of episodes we could do, it got really big, really, really fast. And I think after today, we're going to have a really big list, because one of the things that we want to do is just hear from you guys out there about what you would like to see on a show like this, and what kind of people and what kind of change makers that you'd be interested in seeing featured on essentially what is your food show for this area. Speaking of that, Eryn, recently joined us here and dove just immediately right into this project. And I think that, looking at some of the different perspectives, there's folks that have been here for a long time and sort of, understand that things have been changing, and they've been changing slowly, which I guess is appropriate. It is a slow food movement. And, Eryn, I think you're coming into this phase of like 90 miles an hour. And so I would love for you to just give us a little bit of your background and, how you felt just sort of getting dropped into something where we were just like taking off and going and trying to get all these interviews booked and really start talking about the food system here in Dallas.
Absolutely. It was really inspiring when I, transitioned back to Texas and got involved with Slow Food DFW. And even though it's, we joke it's Snailblazers and everything moves slow and everyone takes their time, this moved really fast for me in a really great way. It's the fact that, we saw a need and immediately filled it. And just, like I said, like before you knew it, there was 20 people to interview, no problem. And I thought that was really important to kind of reflect on the fact that when we think about food, we don't realize how many different types of people are involved in food. You have farmers, you have chefs, you have people that do compost, you have people that raise cattle, people who are doing aquaponics. these things that most of us take for granted or don't think about when we go and sit down for a meal. There's hundreds of thousands of different basically professions that are involved in the food process and in the local food economy. And so just in Dallas alone, the fact that we have all of these different aspects that we can, show everyone how the food system works. I mean, it's really inspiring and incredible to see that we've only just touched the surface of all the possibilities of, how to interact and connect, people who feel like they don't really understand food or they don't know food. This gives that platform for bridging that gap and bringing everyone together, bringing the community, to their local chefs, to their local farmers, to anyone they could ever possibly want to listen to. Slow Food takes care of that.
Well, and speaking of all of these amazing people, what is your perspective on food? What direction are you coming at this from? What draws you to this, what we're doing?
I've always been someone who food's always made sense for me. I don't understand how we have, bigotry in the world because there's food. I could not eat the same thing every day. I love eating food from every culture, every region of the world. And I love the cultural approach to food, how people eat, why they eat, when they eat, like in Italy where, there's appropriate times to drink espresso with food and times that you don't. And there's very ritualistic approaches to food. And I've always loved that. And food's always been this very sacred thing to me. But then there's also the side of it where there's the really devastating, truth that not everyone has access to food and not everybody has access to good food. And that's something that has been kind of my driving force behind what I do and what I want, what I want to help try to fix in the world is how to make sure that, where you live doesn't define what food you get. And I think that, it is a privilege to have wonderful, organic, wholesome, nutritious food. And I think that everybody should have access to that, no matter what income bracket you're in, no matter what zip code you live in. That should not be a privilege. It is a right. And how to figure out how to do this. And I know it's a very large, complex problem. But this summer, and especially with, the slow food interviews, it's been just so incredible to see that everyone's trying to fix that. Everyone, is seeing how bad that is. And we're not waiting on a big, government plan to get everybody better food. People are taking to the streets and taking to the gardens and making food and trying to feed their neighbors and trying to feed the kids and, who lost school lunches. I mean, it's been really incredible to see all of us kind of step up and go, okay, this is what has to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you're talking about some of these interesting big problems. And, we have interacted with a lot of people that are working on some really kind of some big stuff here in Dallas. And, I think we've done 15 episodes now. Maybe this is the 16th, something like that. Mm-hmm. And through all of those, which ones really stuck out to you? What was your favorite? Especially with you, Eryn, you're talking about the things that you're most interested in with folks really getting to access. I think we've done a lot of things about access this summer. And, Amanda, for you, I wonder, kind of having seen this through a period of time, a different lens, I wonder the perspective, if there's something that you're surprised by or something that, you think is really of this time and what you guys kind of thought of that. Whoever wants to go first.
I'll jump in. I guess you're talking about 30 or 40 years for me of working on just trying to keep in this food system. I'm really a grower, and I was working with farmers markets, community gardens, and I think that is so then I brought in farmers market managers to do a talk. But the thing that I really was trying to do was offset, farmers market managers never did talk to each other. They felt it was they were in competition. And one of the things that we know as Slow Food is that you get stronger when you start collaborating and talking to each other. And that was when I was at the Dallas Farmers Market, that was one of the things I wanted to do, was bring the market managers together and have them interact. And so by us having 3 different market managers on one screen,
Oh yeah.
that was huge for me. And then also when we were talking to Plez, I had only met Plez through, just social media, and that we had Slow Food had seeds that we were distributing to different projects in Dallas. And so when Plez came on, that was our second one, I was blown away. And I realized at that point that there is so many on the ground in the work that are never recognized. And somehow Dallas tends to only pick a couple favorites and continue to talk about them as that's about all of it is with that group or whoever that is. And there's so many more that are out there just working and to do what they're passionate about. And that it might be feed people, put in gardens. It might be like the composting, Turn Compost and Texas Worm Ranch. They just take a niche and they're just working deep into that niche. And I think that was my main takeaway, was just how deep we could go, and still we don't even know who all's out there. And I think that's the neatest thing about it, because we're gathering a community around this. And that's what Slow Food is about, a movement, but we're also saying, come on in. We are working on making sure everybody is mentored. There's leadership, and we're just wanting this to grow. So that's was my takeaway.
I think that's a good takeaway. I mean, the thing that we keep telling ourselves about this show is like, this is pretty easy because people come to us all the time and they always have kind of similar questions, which is like, how do I get to know my farmer? And how do I get into composting? And what are the good farmers markets? And, we thought, well, that'll be easy. We know all of these people. And I think, to your point, what's been really cool is seeing that we don't know all of these people. And those of us that are already extremely optimistic, who were impressed with how many there were that we knew about, this is really cool. And I think that having a platform for folks that they can share those messages to a broad audience that's actually interested in this information, I think it's something that could only happen in this time. And it's really exciting. It makes me really hopeful too. Eryn, did you want to share some highlights from this season? I know you got to host a show. You wrote a lot of letters about the shows, and you always have good takes.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely did have a little bit of, I guess, favoritism towards the one I hosted with Richard Bouchard and Reverend Peter Jackson, because that was something that was really, really important to me. And something that that was very inspiring to me, kind of like, you were saying with Plez, how we saw like, there's so many people on the ground that are not being recognized. Here are 2 people that are out there doing the work, and they left, one of them left, a more financially lucrative job to, do the thing that they thought was right. And I think that that's a big shift that a lot of us are facing right now, of leaving, because, with the economy the way it is and the job market the way it is, everyone's having to redefine what work is going to be. And to have the whole food industry turned upside down, it's not just the restaurant industry. I mean, it is the food industry that's been turned upside down. I'm really seeing how big that is and how that, what that looks like. And, we're all having to find a way to redefine what our food industry is. And I think that, that particular episode is really important to me because, we could have talked for another 4 hours, but unfortunately we were limited in time. That one was really special to me. Also, the Turn Compost one was really great for me because I really hate food waste. It's something that just I can't ever figure out or justify. And living in a city, it's really hard to figure out what to do with your food waste. And so to have this company that's, basically, really gone, above and beyond to bridge the gap between consumer, farmer, get people's waste and actually bring it to the farms. I thought that was really incredible. And it's something I never expected to see in Dallas, Texas.
Well, you need to raise your expectations of Dallas, I think, just a little bit.
It's above and beyond now. Like you said, when I came back to Texas, when I left 15 years ago, it was not, it was not where I wanted it to be as far as a way of, food progress and food access. And Dallas has just gone above and beyond. Just this weekend, I was at the big Dallas Farmers Market, eating the food, drinking the coffee, talking to the vendors. It was amazing. After that, I went over to Burgundy and picked up some steaks. And I love shocking people when I say, don't go out to a fancy steakhouse, go get one of these steaks. And sure enough, I got told yet again, oh my God, that's the best steak I've ever had. And I've eaten at fancy steakhouses around the world. And I said, yes, because it's not the cut of the meat. It is the sourcing, just like our vegetables, just like everything else, the flour from the bagels to the vegetables on your salads it's where your food comes from is so important. And it tastes different. And I just think it's so cool that, now we all get to have access to the information. I wouldn't have known about Burgundy if it hadn't been for Slow Food. I wouldn't have known about Turn Compost if it hadn't been for Slow Food. So I know that, and I'm in Slow Food. So I just know that, we're giving so much information to so many people, and it's such a gift.
Yeah. Can I join in on that? I just wanted to take off on that because Eryn, you have written a lot of the follow-up emails, and those we wanted to make sure that we restated what the actions that you could take, and everything you just talked about were like, I found that out, so then I had to go to Burgundy. I found that out, so now I had to go and get the compost. So it would be interesting if anyone who's listening could put that in their comments of what they found out and what they had, what actions that they had taken. And the other piece is we were bringing people together that may not have ever met or known each other. And from that, there's been actions between those two connections. And so, all of that is what the lunch break was about. And I think when we started out, we were going to call it Slow Food People. Mm-hmm. Like, these are the slow food people. You want to be part of these people. And then we decided to do it at noon and just called it the lunch break because that was what it was.
I think it worked out okay, actually. I think you make a good point. There's some really interesting episodes we had. I obviously have an interesting story where I met James Brown and Stephanie Likely, and we talked about where all the flour had gone in the world. It seemed like all the flour was gone. And by the end of the conversation, I was so captivated by this flour that I ordered samples, and then 4 weeks later started Bagel Company. So I think it is actually it was like 6 weeks later, maybe. I got to look at the calendar. And similarly to that, I think we had a lot of responses to a lot of these different shows. But I have a question for you. You guys didn't cheat and look at the stats, right? Do you know what the most popular episode was? Do you want to guess?
I have no idea.
Well, I looked. But that was a while ago, so I was trying to just see. I think it was the compost one. Like
twice as popular as any other episode. And that to me is really, maybe that says something about the state of our food industry, is that everybody's like just looking at the tail end of it and it's just a rotting mess. But also I like the idea that something sort of as strange as having somebody on to talk about compost, and then let's not forget there was also somebody on to talk about worms at the same time. And I think that the combination of compost and worms works in 2020. And I mean, that's pretty amazing. And I also say that at the end of the episode, my wife went outside and built a compost bin because ours had disintegrated over the last year. And now we have a new compost bin. So there's been some really good results so far, at least in my house. There's been some really good results from this program existing. So thanks, Slow Food. This has been good.
I think the compost episode is very symbolic when you talk about, the compost and the worms, where we're definitely at a time right now where things are breaking down and being reconstructed. And, as a society as a whole, we're breaking everything down. We're breaking down the food system, and now we're the worms. We're the ones that are taking all the trash and building something beautiful out of it and really trying to recreate what a new food system looks like.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I also like the fact that, there's something about, I have this story I tell occasionally. I try not to tell it too often because it's so over the top, but I went to culinary school. I went to a big, expensive culinary school on the East Coast called Johnson Wales University in Providence, Rhode Island. And I studied nutrition there. And so my background is in nutrition and food science. And when I was 21 years old, a junior, and I was in a sports nutrition class, and the chef was teaching us how to make power bars, where you'd essentially try to get 10,000 calories in the smallest package possible. You'd feed it to an Olympian or something. Very, very delicious. Not at all. Lots of marshmallows and peanut butter. But anyway, so there was a student that was using carrots, and of course we had extra carrots, and the student asked the chef, do you want me to keep this carrot? And the chef says, yeah, it's a root vegetable. Put it in water, put it in the walk-in. We'll use it tomorrow. And the young cook turns to the chef and says, Chef, carrots don't grow underground. They're not root vegetables. And I know. I mean, now this is, reality check. This is big, expensive culinary school, y'all. This is a 21-year-old kid doing this. And these are the future, right? But it also, I think, is sort of a really interesting educational moment. And the chef took that moment to educate instead of ridicule, and definitely soapbox for quite a long time. But, the fundamentals of understanding what the food is functionally, really just even understanding on that level of these are spicy so that other animals won't eat them. We eat the leaves and the stems of vegetables. We eat the roots of vegetables. I think just understanding food on that kind of fundamental level, it is becoming more common than it was in the past. And I think that we've got folks that are interested in compost. We are accelerating. That is so far beyond the pale of what anybody wanted to talk about 10 years ago. Certainly not, cosmopolitan, and these folks that are going out to fancy restaurants, and, gardening has even changed. And so I think that we've got this whole new cultural moment now. And I'm really curious what we're going to do about it. I mean, I think that, as folks that, there's a platform here, there's got to be some responsibility for that, and understanding that, the world has changed, and our most popular thing we talked about was worms and rotting food. What does that make you think for season 2? And where should we go? What do you think that people want to see? Since they're not telling us in the comments, hint, hint. But until they tell us, what do you guys think?
I think it's limitless. I've got my dream list of who I would like to interview and talk to. But I truly, it's, kind of what we were saying, it's so fascinating how far things have come. I had a similar story where, I spent a lot of time teaching elementary through high school culinary and gardening programs. And so for me, the idea was always, okay, if you teach the kids, it'll change the world. And then it wasn't until I was working on a farm in New Hampshire where I had, an adult come in, and they asked me, what lettuce looked like.
Oh my gosh.
And it kind of blew my mind because, a lot of the companies in New England at this time were giving their employees CSAs as part of benefit packages to encourage healthier food, to get the employees to go to farms and buy produce. And it wasn't that this person, had never had lettuce. It was this person always had lettuce in a bag. They'd always had the pre-made Dole mixed salad. They'd never actually purchased a head of lettuce and broke that down and turned it into a salad or put it on a sandwich or whatever that was. And that was this big aha moment for me, that was like, okay, this is problem is so much bigger than just making sure the kids understand where food comes from. The adults don't know where food comes from, and the parents and the teachers and the educators. We have to put as much energy into them, because those are, as one of our guests said, like the parents, the grandparents, those are the purchasers. Those are the ones who are buying the food and supporting the food systems financially. And so I think for me, there's definitely some really cool celebrity chefs I'd like to see in the upcoming season and talk to. There's a lot of local farmers I would like to talk to, but I really also want to talk to more food educators and people, how we, food educators being, anyone who, exactly, the chef that you worked with at Johnson & Wales, who said, I'm going to use this as a teaching moment. Just people who have been able to, educate others on, what food is and how the systems work, and how do we make sure that, because to me, like that just seems like such a grave disservice to our, to everyone in the society if we have people who cannot even identify certain vegetables, let alone know where they come from and how they're stored and then how they're cooked.
Well, and then to go do it for a living. I mean, it's this whole weird thing. And I think that, one of the, there certainly is a way that you can go through life just not being awake and not really paying attention to the thing in front of you. And I know there's a lot of people on the planet, and there's nothing wrong with them, but there's a lot of people that could eat chicken and rice and broccoli 3 times a day, every day, and be totally okay with that.
Right.
And I think that as the folks that are keepers of the culture of what we're talking about, this kind of food, this kind of connection, showcasing the folks that understand how to make those connections, I think is really smart, and being an educator myself, I know how hard it is to crack through the veneer of what education is about a lot of times, especially at the collegiate level, where, I always ask my students, like, hey, if you're here for the grade, like, I'm not going to talk about grades the whole time. So like, I don't want you to talk about grades. Like, it's not interesting. Let's talk about like learning things that might make you money someday, because that should be why you're here. And largely it isn't, right? It's just to turn the key and move forward, And so I think that, you talk about food, that kind of education is so important, because if you get people to really understand the food and the food system, you give them a hobby, you give them a passion. And I also think you give them like an ability to network and meet people, which is really beautiful. I wanted to tell the brief story for the audience, essentially, of how, to recap how Lunch Break got put together. It was a couple people who really love the food system and want to see it get better, decided to do it. And using slow food as a conduit, many people can do many things. And I think that that's what we need to begin to understand as a society, is that, we're going to go and find those people, bring them here and highlight them. But if you're here watching this on replay or right now, you really ought to be one of those people. And it's worth all of your time learning about those people to also become one of those people. And I think that this is a really, really good platform for that. And maybe with that, Amanda, if we want to talk a little bit about all of the crazy, exciting things that are coming up in September and beyond for Slow Food, this might be a good time to make some pitches.
Okay, yeah, well, I can do that. But before I
hear about favorite stuff too, I'm sorry, I guess I didn't.
Yeah, second season, I have. And so on that thought that we are a conduit, so what we've talked about is it could actually go from just one lunch break to multiple platforms. And we need people to go join in and help on the backside. It's really fun on the backside. What goes on in the background? It's kind of like you're on the ground crew or something. But one could be like demonstrations, and or one could be, we want to encourage more volunteering for projects that are going on. that putting in a community garden or put a hoop house up. And so there could be another wing of documenting volunteer opportunities and who's there and what they've done. One of those, so I'm thinking it could be actually when you said limitless, Eryn. Also, this platform can also break off and be a multitude. And then Sapna of Be Spiced is one of our board members for Slow Food DFW. She does a lot of online demonstrations, but she understands, she's a dietitian, and she understands the Indian spices and what they do for your body. Like I learned from her by watching one of her podcasts that you really don't want to drink ginger tea before bed because ginger is an energizer. And I'm like, well, it's an herbal tea. I can drink that before bed. And I'd go to bed and I'd be like moving all over, and I'm like, what is it? And once I watched her, it's like ginger is if you need energy. So not only food is nutritious, but it also has different reactions with your body. And it's just like such an interesting thing. So that said, a lot's coming up. One of the main things that Slow Food DFW is doing is all of our leadership is part of Slow Food USA Leadership Summit, which starts tonight with a state of slow food. And if you're interested in that, you can get online and register. And it's going to be 3 weeks of panels, and it's all the leadership throughout the United States. Seth and I are doing a panel. He's hosting it, and I'm on with Slow Food Detroit and Slow Food East End. And we're talking about, one of the things we're going to talk about is lunch break. And then Seth, I think you're doing something with another panel on the technology behind lunch break. So that's starting tonight, slowfoodusa.org. And then also starting in October, every third year for Slow Food International, there is the Terra Madre, which is the big congress, the time to gather together in Italy, where it was started in Turin. But this year, because of COVID, they are doing it all online. So Seth threw that up there, the website. If you go to slowfoodusa.org, go to Gather and then the Terra Madre. And then when you click on that, they're going to do 6 months of, they could be demonstrations, they can be talks, panels, and you will learn a whole lot more about the global issues, the global, where slow food is actually originated from. And I think most of the registration is free for that. So we're looking forward to really immersing ourselves in what's happening other places, because it also helps us here to get ideas and say, hey, we got people that do this, I am excited about all that. How to join. September is our membership drive for Slow Food USA. All our membership goes to the National. We're a chapter of the National. And so to become a member, then you get to receive a lot of emails and information and swag, like my Slow the Fork Down shirt that I'm the membership drive, we are to increase our membership by 20%. So jump right in there and join. You can go to our website, slowfooddfw.org. And that also, when we do events, when we come back to doing events, we usually have a link to get your event ticket at a discount if you're a member. So that's also how we can give back to that. And the other thing is we also have a donate link on our website, and that donate link goes straight into our 501c3 nonprofit. And so we're an all volunteer organization, but you know, if we get moving along, we're probably going to need some funds to do all the things that we want to do and all of the ideas, and try to bring those to everyone here in Dallas-Fort Worth. So yeah, that's it. Thanks, Seth.
I think that's a great pitch. So in the month of September, we need a lot of people to join. I mean, if you have enjoyed these kinds of conversations, you want to see these kinds of things happen, I'm just going to be real with you. They're not going to happen unless you have those kinds of conversations. And what better people to have them with than us here? The ones that you're watching on Tuesday afternoon for some reason. I really highly suggest getting involved in the food scene in Dallas. Is very cool. And I've lived in a couple different places. I came back to Dallas because I like it here. And honestly, as somebody who is connected to a lot of farmers, I think that we have a better relationship here with farmers than they do in a lot of major food cities across the country, certainly compared to San Francisco, Chicago, Los Angeles, New York. A lot of our chefs are very, very intimately familiar with their farmers and their products and really what that life is like. A lot of them go out and work on those farms. And I think that it's more accessible to folks than maybe they realize. But here's the serious part. I mean, we got to be real. The food industry just melted in front of our faces. And if we want it to come back, and if we want good, authentic, clean, fair food that, is generous to the folks who made it and is fair to the farm workers and is healthy for our bodies, we're going to have to fight for that. There's going to be some weird stuff going on, I feel like, pretty soon here. And honestly, it really does take a village. I think we do need to fight for our food system. I think that we all know what happened when we didn't fight hard enough over the last 30 years or so. And so I think that there's a bit of a moment, right? And, Amanda and I think we hit it off, a couple of years ago, just sort of talking about the fact that we were in a moment. And back then it felt like a big deal. Now I couldn't even imagine that this, that looked like child's play. That was nothing. This is an actual moment. And so, cities that want to change history can, DFW can get out there and actually push for these things. So I will vote for the next season. I want to see some political stuff. I want to see some folks that are out there trying to make these changes, because I get a lot of messages from folks that are looking for those kinds of organizers and are looking for those kinds of movements. And key of advice, if you can't find anybody who's leading the charge that you want to lead, you just lead it yourself. Come on the show. We'll talk about it. We'll send it out on the newsletter. It's going to be great. This has been really fun. I've had a really good time hosting it. I really appreciate the audience for letting me do that and not booing me off right away. And I also appreciate Eryn and Caitlin who sat in for me. I didn't get Amanda to do it, but maybe next season. And it's been really a privilege actually to be able to talk about these issues every week. So I just want to say thank you to everybody for hanging out with us and letting me meet all these amazing people. And my Rolodex grows every day that I'm a part of this organization. So it's been really, really cool.
Yeah, and I want to say thank you as well. We've noticed since starting the newsletter, our readership has definitely grown, and it means a lot that people are reading that. Basically, for the newsletters, what that is that goes to your inbox, and it is a recap of the episodes you may or may not have missed, and kind of reminds you of the finer details, so you remember why it is you want to go get that compost, or why you want to go get that steak, or why you want to go to visit this farmer. And it's really inspiring to see that every day more and more people are opening those up and reading them, and we're getting to have that open dialogue of these things that are really important to us. And yes, there is a lot of work. There's a lot. This is a huge momentum of change right now in the world, but it's also just a lot of fun. And that part, that part's really nice. And it's an amazing team to work with.
Yeah, and amazing. I mean, when Eryn called and we talked for probably an hour and a half the first time we talked on the phone. Just because we were like-minded and it was just like exciting. I think that's probably one of the neatest things is the connections that I've made through lunch break, but also through Slow Food. And then the other, I can't even remember what my other thought was. But I'm excited. Thank you, both of you and Caitlin. I know that we had a lot of the back end was, always moving, and I think that we can do it again. Season 2 is coming. Yeah.
Let's do it. This will be great. Everybody send us your ideas. Go to slowfooddfw.org. Sign up for Slow Food. You might, this is going to sound crazy, but on the national level, we're kind of a big deal. And we could be a really, really, really big deal, but you need to join. Otherwise, we won't be. So it's your fault. Anyway, thanks, guys. This has been a really wonderful season and an awesome conversation with some of my favorite people. And write to us. Don't be a stranger. You know where you're on the internet. And let us know what you want to see for season 2. And bye, guys. Sounds
Bye.
good? Yeah, okay. Enjoy your lunch without us next week.
Yeah.
Yeah, it won't be as good, but, well, maybe it will, actually. Maybe you learned something. I believe in you.
Yeah.
Bye.